Ben is
Oh, wait,
718.
we're going live. Just be careful.
I'll put it in the chat.
Put
Does
it in
that
the
go
chat,
live?
yeah. In case Ben has admirers that are going to, abuse the phone number.
Aramet groupies.
Exactly. Okay, we're ready to roll.
Yeah.
We have a young Tzaddik with me in this
Yeah.
class.
Reincarnated.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, ready to start? So we were talking last week, or 2 weeks ago, about this very difficult to understand concept of let me just fix this here. Speaker view. About, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
He'll be on in 10 minutes.
Okay. Okay, great.
Thanks, David.
Play around with the screen here. Anyway, the concept that we were talking about is the idea that there's an attachment to the body, that even after the body dies, the soul isn't totally free to go into the higher realms when the body is still whole or didn't decompose enough. So that's kind of where we were left off. And the question that the Zohar asked last week is like, if the Satan is also the Malach HaMaves, what does he need? What does he care? As soon as the death occurs, he should feel like he won. That's his mission, is to not just cause us to sin, but then to what is it called? The Grim Reaper?
Yeah.
What's the name for the Satan in English vernacular? The Grim Reaper.
The Grim Reaper sounds right.
Yeah. So
That's the Malach HaMaves, not the Satan.
no, yeah. Well, actually, no. The Gemara says the Yetzer Hara is the Satan, is the Malach HaMaves. Meaning, we think of them as separate things, and certainly they have separate functions, but they take on the different roles. It's a Gemara that actually says that. Fascinating Gemara. In other words, like first it tells you why are you having, such a miserable life. Sin a little. Enjoy your life. Do some more sinning, and then eventually it turns on you and tells God, look, this person doesn't deserve to live. And then God says, okay, fine, take them. And that, so the Yetzer Hara, Satan, Malach HaMaves, it's like it's a metamorphosize of an earlier stage. Yes, they're different levels, but they're
Different masks.
different masks. Yeah. So what does it need us, like after the person's dead, what does he care anymore? So the answer is that there's two things, and they're somehow connected. That one is the prize of the Satan is the body somehow of the deceased. which is why the idea of tumat mace is so much a part of the biblical and some rabbinic writings, is because he feasts on the fact that there was a soul that's no longer with the body. That's like his thing. He likes that. And I guess what that represents, the second part of that and how it's connected, is what it represents is the inability of the soul to really break out of being having been part of a relationship with the body that it can't really free itself from after death. I get, like an analogy would be when a relationship is physically over, but it's not over emotionally, right? Like if you had a bad breakup with somebody you're really into, and then they say, lose my number, never call me again. It doesn't always work out like, okay, the relationship is over. Now it's like, I'm fine. I'm just going to go on with my life. I don't need anyone. No, you're still attached to that person. You're miserable without them. You're angry, whatever it is. So it's almost like you think because the soul and the body like left each other, that's the end of the relationship. Like there's no connection. Of course there's a connection.
Fine.
So what ends up happening is as long as the body is dead, but not really decomposed, the soul is metaphysically, psychologically still like not able to get over what it was before. It kind of makes sense when you think about it. It's kind of a very weird concept when you first read it, right? Are you guys with me?
Yeah.
Like when you first read it, it's almost shocking. It's like, what?
I have a question.
Being
actually.
separated before you get divorced.
Yeah, but even like a divorce or separation, I mean, David, professionally, because you've helped a lot of people, and you probably, always start off as a lawyer helping people legally. And then at some point that your clients must turn to you and say, whoa, this is like, it's never over, or like, there's so many complex feelings, love and hate, they're so connected, right?
I have a
Anyway,
question.
Ted, yes, Ted.
Is there any particular reason, any problem or question that was that the author was dealing with that led him to bring this up? I mean, it
In
hasn't
terms
come
of
up
their own
before.
personal life, like a death, like did they experience death and have a specific issue around death? Is that?
I mean, this talking about basically the body after it's buried, but before it's disintegrated, this period of time, what is the status of it and what power did the Sutton have over it? This was never dealt with in earlier texts, as far as I know of, or maybe it was, but why is it so important to the author here? What's it seems like there's something bothering the author that he's started talking about something that I've never heard about before anywhere else. I don't know if that's a pertinent question.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So there's two answers. One answer is that the Zohar has actually quite a bit of space dedicated to dealing with related questions about death and the afterlife and the body and mourning and the process of dying and death, not as an event, but as a process. It's just scattered throughout the Zohar, Ted. So it's not like the fact that you don't remember it could very well be because it isn't like here is the book on death. I mean, we did do, I don't know if you were part of the group yet, we did do Sabbath de Mishpatim, which is a lot about reincarnation.
Yeah.
And it was in a weird way only about strange circumstances of death, not ordinary ones, like the concept of the yibum and the chalitza, the kind of levirate marriage, what that means on a metaphysical level, but it is a common theme of the Zohar. In fact, so much so that I think when you combine the practice of Hilchot Avelut, the morning rituals and laws, whether it's around the Onain, the Kvura, the burial, the time preceding the burial, the Shiva, the Shloshim, the Shana Rishona, the Yartzeit, all of these things, the periods of mourning. This you unfortunately know too well because you were just coming out of a double, Shiva for your brother, Shiva for your father, Shloshim, and so on. All of those things are spelled out in halacha in a way that are really very important for people to be able to participate in. In fact, a lot of people who are not religious per se, when it comes to death, they're looking for rituals of mourning and will often actually be very thankful that they exist, even though they may not be synagogue goers or kosher observers or anything really. But they do want to remember and mourn with rituals. And when you combine those halachot and minhagim, those laws and customs, with some of the ideas of the Zohar, I think it even adds a level of meaning, because I don't really want to stop to explain how each one of those things I mentioned in halacha and the details of them, how the Zohar addresses almost each and every one of them. And it fits in very well with the halacha. So it's kind of like a lot of people don't even know what they're doing. They just know it helps them to sit Shiva and to do Shloshim. But with the Zohar, it actually does even more. It kind of explains it. So
Too bad there isn't a Galatianers, a Book of the Dead.
yeah, I mean, it really is there. There is a Book of the Dead, and it's just scattered throughout in such a way that it's hard to like reconstruct. But it's it is there. It is there. So now but to really address the other part of your question is, did something happen? Was this section of the Zohar and possibly other sections of the Zohar coming out of a experience that's more than just like one rabbi reading earlier works and based on those earlier works adding some of their own insights? Is where are these insights coming from? Are any of them personal? I'm just kind of reframing your question. It's a very good question, Ted. I don't know the answer.
Okay, it's all right. Yeah.
It's
don't
a
have
great
to.
it's a great question. I think there used to be this retreat called Ruach that Mayor Fund and of course Shlomo
Oh, yeah.
and other kind of great teachers would go to, and they had a session called Questions and Questions. Because usually you have like at a retreat questions and answers, stump the rabbi. But the whole idea was to say sometimes the best thing you could do is a question. So it's a good question. You don't have to give the answer because question is better than the answer. See, it's a good question, Ted.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to start with the top of 121, which again is really in the middle of a subject. I think I reviewed just some of the kernel concept of what we were doing. You can always look it over. You could always listen to the shir, which is up on Facebook from last week. So the other side provides flesh from its flesh. From its side comes flesh and nothing else. We were talking about the different levels of the soul. And now we introduce this concept of the other side as being the contributor of the physicality of the person. Its chariots provide all of those sinews and veins conveying blood to the flesh. So it's not just the flesh, it's also the I'm not a doctor. I didn't pay enough attention when we did physiology. But the blood flow through the body, right? That's its chariot, so to speak. After these provide, the heavens provide their powers. And what are they? Interesting. Skin stretched over all corresponding to their pattern. Afterwards, heaven and earth join as one, providing fire, water, air, and earth to protect all of these, covering all. Okay. Afterwards, each one takes the portion that it provided, which is nullified, which I guess means after death. So I'll read it a little bit in Aramaic since Ben isn't here. The lebasar kolcha natil choka diyav is batal. Rucha de kutsha or sichen delay chokaihu kaima. Rucha de kutsha rucha delay kaima. Nishmasa salka resichen de rucha kadishin garmin delhon kayamin valdach shiva de gufen garmin have kinkach sivats mosecha. Yachlitz vishalok sivbehachi. I'm going to read that in English. Again, from afterwards.
Mhm.
Each one takes the portion that it provided, which is nullified, as for the Holy Spirit and her chariots. The Holy Spirit, her rucha, spirit endures, and Ishmata, the soul, ascends. So basically what we're saying is that there's the ruach and the neshama. We're not really talking about the nefesh so much here. But after the body dies, the composition that was made up of the ruach and the neshama, the basar, the atzamot or the gidin, the or the skin, the four base elements of fire, water, air, and earth. They all start to go back to each one's respective source. The bones, it's interesting because a bone in Hebrew is etzem. The word etzem also means essence. So there's something essential about the bones. The bone is considered that which like doesn't just kind of, go its own way. Now again, our science today classifies things differently. They had a way of classifying things with four base elements of earth, air, fire, water. We have a table of elements. We have our physics today is not exactly the physics of 2,000 years ago or even at the time of the Zohar. But be that as it may, if you wanted to translate that into contemporary understanding, you would say, okay, the body starts decomposing and the different systems within the person, right? The mind, the organs, each one of them kind of folds into something else and dissipates into whatever body of physical dissipation or mystical, metaphysical dissipation. Okay. We welcome Ben, so I don't have to read in two languages now. We're on Kuf Ayin 170A. I just actually read a little bit of Aramaic, so you'll start us off at
178A?
170A.
Oh, 170.
Yeah. V'chol zimna de bisra de sitra achra kaima b'kiyuma. Hahu satan kaima la'astana.
I'm sorry, just 1 second. I apologize. I was a little bit ahead. Let me just see. 170A. Could you just say a little, v'chol zimna de bisra, the
Yeah.
bisra de sitra? Okay.
Yeah, that's it. But you don't have to read anything. I'm catching up to that. I already read the Aramaic for the next two lines. Therefore, the essence of the body is the bones. So it is written, he will invigorate your bones. It's Isaiah 58:11, which is not written of the flesh. Read 206, Zev. You don't have to read 205. We did that last week. Zev?
206. Yeah, 206. When a person dies, the components of his body return to their source and disintegrate. Have a rucha, the spirit, deriving from Shekhinah, who is the Holy Spirit, endures in the Garden of Eden, and Nishmata, the soul, deriving from Tiferes, ascends to the celestial Garden of Eden. The bones, which also derive from Shekhinah, endure much longer than the rest of the body. According to rabbinic tradition, one particular bone at the base of the spine is indestructible. This bone, shaped like an almond, is called luz, almond, and from it, God will one day resurrect decomposed bodies. The essence renders chashivu, significance. The full verse in Isaiah reads, Havaya will guide you always. He will satisfy nafshecha, your thirst or soul. Betzachos, in parched regions, and invigorate your bones. You'll be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters do not fall. The simple meaning of the rare word tzachos is parched places, which should fit the context, but the Zohar often construes it as radiances, based on the root tzaddik, to glean.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, ready to roll, Ben?
Yeah. V'chol zimna de bisra de sitra achra kaima b'kiyuma.
As long as the flesh of the other side endures abidingly or just continues to exist,
Hahusatan kaima le'astana.
the Satan is poised to continue its accusatory posturing.
Is avid bisra lesle rishula astana.
Once the flesh is eliminated, disintegrates, he is powerless to do his attack.
The halesle alma de yistamech.
Since he has nothing on which to base himself.
Valdaksiv yechel bisaro merohi v'shupu atzmosav lo ru'u.
Thus it is written, his flesh wastes away from sight, and his bones are rubbed away, and they can no longer be seen. Verse in Job 33, chapter 30, verse 21.
Me'ahu chezu de satan de kaimal astana de lo yachil.
From the sight of Satan, poised to accuse, but he cannot, because his flesh has been eaten away. Okay, so let me just go over what that means. Is that we said before in our introduction that Satan's portion is the physical element of the person. The reason why that is twofold. First of all, that's his contribution. Secondly, that's where we fail. Because of our physicalness, we tend to trip ourselves up. The Yetzer Hara is usually connected to some part of our physical being, even though it isn't necessarily physical that trips us up. It could be. It could be ego and arrogance, which is beyond just the hana'at haguf, the pleasure of the body. But usually the pleasure of the body is where we fail. And therefore, because of that, when we want to enter into Gan Eden, we don't have what we called before 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, the guf zach, the purified body. Even the tzaddik had so many appetites of this world just to survive that they don't have the guf zach. They don't have this ethereal, spiritual embodiment to be able to use as a vehicle, like chariot is a vehicle that Zohar uses, a great word for chariot is a vehicle, something that transports someone or something from one location to another into the spiritual realm. So as long as the Yetzer Hara, as long as the body is still there, even though it's after death, that's the power that the Satan has to continue to accuse the soul, to limit even a good person's access to Gan Eden during that time. A bad person has other things to worry about. Even after the body generally decomposes, they still may be continued to be punished. So it's not automatic. It's not like all you need to worry about is that your body decomposes and then you have a good person. That's the case. Let's read the note. 207.
207. As long as the body has not decomposed, Satan or the other side is empowered to accuse, since he is linked with the flesh which derives from him. The verse in Job describing someone mortally ill reads, his flesh wastes away from sight, or till it cannot be seen. V'shufu atzmasav lo ru'u. And his bones are rubbed away. They can no longer be seen, and his bones are laid bare. They cannot be looked upon, and his bones are rubbed away out of sight,
122, yeah.
and his bones, once unseen, are laid bare. Here, the first half of the verse, his flesh wastes away from sight, implies that once the flesh wastes away from sight of Satan, he is powerless to accuse. Satan's accusations lead to punishment in the grave, known as chibut hakever, beating in the grave. And then there are a number of sources on that. And also on the soul being punished until the body decomposes.
Okay, we're on top of 122. Go ahead.
Vishupu atzmosa lo ru'u lo ischazim lekarva legabe.
Vishafu atzmosav, and his bones are rubbed away. They can no longer be seen. They cannot be seen by him, for he has no share in them.
The leslei bahon chaloka kaven the shaf kol chad v'chad miduchte lo tova alayhu.
Even though every single one has slipped from its place, meaning the bones are, coming apart, he makes no claim against them and does not stand to accuse them. For once the flesh is consumed, he does not demand judgment or stand to accuse, nor does he mention that person regarding anything in the world. It doesn't have to be a total decomposition, just a certain stage within it. Go ahead and read that in the.
Labasa de bisra misakla halo yispo dina v'lo koyim lastana de holeslei alma de yistamech. V'lo itkar labarnash b'shem milo de oma.
Okay, he doesn't talk about us anymore, right? Which is what we want. Okay, Amar Rabbi Shimon.
Amar Rabbi Shimon. Hashta yadana milan al tikunayu.
Now I perceive matters the way they are. Perfect. Surely it is fitting for him to accuse.
Bada yosu leilastana. Amalei Rabbi Chagor zena.
In other words, before the body begins that level of decomposition, he still has a relationship to the flesh, and that's why he's going to do his thing. So Amar le Rabbi Chagor zena chavesakin and garmacha. Right, so he's talking to one of these heavenly beings, tells Rabbi Shimon, gird your weapon and prepare yourself. If you wish to comprehend this matter that you began, or to ask about these matters, speak. In other words, go ahead.
Itive laminda milan desharis, o itishal bahani milan, emily.
If you have any questions, now speak. Girding your loins or girding your weapon is an expression about not just going to war, but it's about involving yourself in a fight for the Torah, so to speak. And now he's saying you have something to ask. Ask. He said, certainly. Look. I know that my wife, Allah Bashalom, right? She's passed away. She didn't know anything about me. On the other hand, In other words, my wife didn't understand who I was. I'm Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but she didn't get it. But the Chavraya Kadisha, they know who I am. They understand I have a very high soul.
Noshin Mai Taima Datayu Kala.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
this is
This is
hard to
bad for
understand.
Facebook.
What?
This
Now,
is dangerous now.
This is on Facebook, and it's fine. The Zohar. Let me just give you a little precursor of what's to come. There's a concept in the Talmud called Nashim Daitan Kalos, which means women's minds are light. Okay, that could mean one of two things: that they're not as serious, not as heavy, not as focused as men, and that certainly how some people understand it. And that might be how the Zohar is creating a setup where it's implying that, but then it's going to respond. This is the question, and the response is going to be not at all the case. The response is going to be something else, which is the kalot or lightness is going to turn into kala. Women are brides. Now, that's also that's even more controversial today to say women are brides. What if they're not a bride? It's not even referencing necessarily the physical groom and bride, but the idea of the mirroring of the Shekhinah. So in fact, you're going to see an amazing thing. The angel or spiritual being that's listening to Rabbi Shimon says, of course you didn't mean your wife doesn't understand you. Of course your wife understands you. What you meant to say is something else. You're really asking a question about the Shekhinah. You're asking another question. And you refer to it as your wife, but not your actual wife. And you would never say that about your wife. And then the Zohar is going to say that again a second time, that when Sarah tells, when God tells Abraham that your wife laughed and said, how could she give birth because she's old? Really, Sarah said, how could I give birth? Because my husband is old. And God changed it because of Shalom bias. Didn't want to tell Abraham what Sarah had actually said about him being old. So what the Zohar is teaching us two times in today's thing is that Mishanin, it's a rabbinic concept found in the Talmud. You can change the truth a little bit for the sake of peace. You can't lie, but you can, there's a few times in the world where you can, if you want to make peace between a husband and wife, you don't have to tell everything. You have to say everything. Okay. So that's one thing. So let's take a look at number 120. I'm sorry, 210 and 211.
210. Am I on? Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. 210. The spiritual messenger urges Rabbi Shimon to sharpen his mind if he wishes to probe more deeply. The phrase, the matter that you began, refers to the description of the heavenly temple. See other notes. My wife has passed away. Whereas the companions are fully aware of Rabbi Shimon's unique status, his wife was not. On Rabbi Shimon's status, see above notes. The expression they are light-minded renders, what is it, Taihu Kala? In rabbinic literature, the statement, women are light-minded, means that they are easily swayed, inconsistent, highly emotional, or of unstable temperament.
Okay. Remember, we're going to continue and we'll see what the Zohar has to say. The Zohar reinterprets the meaning of that.
Is that word taihu there similar to tohu in the beginning of the Genesis?
No.
Tohu, vavohu?
No. It's da'at. It's similar to the word va'adam yada et chava, and Adam knew Eve. That's what it's similar to.
Done. Okay. Thank you.
that Taihu, that what you're seeing is the Aramaic rendition of it. So it kind of changes. We would say in Hebrew, da'at, right? Dalid, ayin,
And-
tes.
Right.
But not the ahu part is the Aramaic. So don't get distracted by that part of it. Yeah.
Amar-
43. He replied, Daita.
Amalei, daita asya b'shis dargan, v'chol chad natal chulake.
Mind or some level of knowledge-based consciousness goes along the 6 levels, the 6 attributes or rungs, right? Chesed through Yisod, each one taking its share.
Ma de ishta ar kal ihu.
What remains is kal, the lightness, yet
Aval
precious.
yakira da ilav de eshes kesilos ishtataf ba.
Go on.
V'mila da lo tishal, da hayadana da laval de visach sha'alta.
Concerning this matter, do not ask, for I know that you didn't ask about your wife, but rather about what it is written. Sorry, Ben, I'm just gonna keep going. Yeah.
El al madach siv, hine Hashem rochev al of kal.
You weren't asking about your wife. Your wife loved you and got you, but you were asking about something else. What were you asking about? The verse that says, see God, Hashavaya Yukivake, rides on a light cloud.
Vahu of kal ikre das.
That Avkal, that quick cloud, is called Das.
Meahi kala
Right.
yirasesh.
Of that bride, of that Kala.
I kaima bem so isa kagavna de dasi lo.
Law of God, poised in the middle like the supernal Das, but called Kal light. Okay, Zev, we're going to read note 212.
212.
An important note, take your time.
Das. Data, Hebrew das, mind or knowledge, refers to the divine mind pictured as the synthesis of Chachma and Bina. The spiritual messenger describes how this potency proceeds through the 6 sephirotic rungs from Chesed through Yesod, each one of whom absorbs some of it. What remains for Shekhinah, the final rung, is Kal, light yet precious. The messenger understands that Rabbi Shimon wasn't asking about his own wife, but rather about the divine wife, Shekhinah, bride of Havaya. Her element of Da'as, which is Kal, light, is pictured as Avkal, a swift cloud. She is situated in the middle, between right and left, just as Da'as is situated between Chachma and Bina. The messenger plays on the term Kala, bride, and Kal, light. Another of Shekhinah's many designations is Awe of Havaya. The full verse in Isaiah reads, an utterance concerning Egypt. See, Havaya rides on a swift cloud, and he is coming to Egypt. The godlings or idols of Egypt will tremble before him, and the heart of Egypt will melt within it.
Okay. So now back to the body of the text of the Zohar.
Ahaya dana she'alta dilach maihi.
Yet I know what your question is,
Aval share v'chagar zenach v'katr kitrach.
but begin to gird your weapon and tie your knot.
The ha'idana hu legala kemo
The
desharas
time
amda.
has come to reveal what you began.
The al anpe rochav besa ulam da azara lago.
The fashioning upon the breadth of the temple, the whole of the courtyard within. Now, remember, we spent a long time describing the mystical dimensions in very intense and like mind-boggling detail a number of months ago. So now he's referencing back to that, and he's going to add in some details about that.
Bahai azara is tresar pischen.
And this courtyard are 12 entrances,
Lofum chushban shiftayit Yisrael.
according to the number of the tribes of Israel.
Bepischa chadek siver uvein.
On one entrance is written Reuben, the other entrance is written Shimon. In other words, each one has the inscription of a particular name of a tribe. Similarly, all tribes of Israel are inscribed on these entrances. When they ascend to appear before the master of the universe, the one entering the opening marked Reuven, if he is from the tribe of Reuben, the opening accepts him. If not, it's you got to be a member of that particular tribe to get into, have access to that entrance. And so with all, for the opening accepts only one who is from the tribe marked on them, thereby every single one is engraved and identified.
So how about people who are converts? Where do they go through?
Yeah, it's a crazy theory. Two theories. Either you converted to a tribe, you said, can't be a Cohen or a Levi, but you could be a Gad or Ruvain. But the simple answer is there was a 13th. There's a Shar HaKlali, which means a general gate where people from different tribes and converts would go in. Again, this is all metaphysical. This isn't the actual thing, you know.
Maybe the other thing is that it's sort of like it's a two conditional thing. If you're from Reuven, it accepts you. If not, it rejects you. If you're a convert, you're not from Reuven. You're just not Reuven. So
Yeah,
maybe it doesn't reject you.
That idea, I don't know, you know, this concept of like, it's funny, when the first times I was involved in helping people become Jewish, converts, teaching them, they were like, well, don't we have to decide what type of Jew we're converting to? And my first reaction is, no, you're just converting to become a Jew. But the reality is that people want to become Sephardic or Ashkenazic. Like, as an Ashkenazic Jew, I just think they're Ashkenaz, but why? Right? What do they want to become? What type of community do they want to join into? Now, they don't have to decide the moment they're converting, right? But it's just a crazy idea that has a lot of truth to it, that ultimately a lot of converts want to convert not just to Judaism, but to a specific type of community. It doesn't mean they can't change that if they converted with a Hasidic rabbi, that they can't become Litvish and vice versa. It just means they have a mahalach within Judaism that they're more connected to. Just happens to be the case most of the time, not all the time. The truth is, when you do a conversion, you try to kind of take away those layers and just give them the essence of whatever Judaism is. But it's so impossible to really do that because we're all so kind of, you got to go really deep to
Do you tell them to put on tefillin?
one.
Do you tell them to put on tefillin during Chol Hamoed or not? You have to make a choice.
Okay, I tell them not to. My custom, you know, so I think of them as like just a continuation of me, which isn't necessarily healthy. You know, you have to just like, that's just my experience. There's Sephardic. I think we do that all the time, even with not converting people. Just anybody calls up and asks you a question, you answer according to what you understand. You don't start saying, well, are you Sephardic? Are you Ashkenazic? Are you Hasidic? Or are you Misnagid? That's a criticism of the human condition, you know, that we should be more aware of the particulars of who that person is, what their family was like and what they might have, the customs that were particular to that area, not just what you grew up with, you know. That's part of the job of the rabbi that we usually miserably fail at. I was planning, we have that smicha program, and my goal was to have like Sephardic rabbis come in and teach them Sephardic customs just so they become more aware of it. And of course, it's like I didn't do it, you know, like it's just hard. It's hard enough to know what you're supposed to do. It's even harder to figure out what somebody else from another, you know, area in the world, what their particular customs are. So it just gets, and you know, sometimes it's there's malice, but usually there's not malice. It's just ignorance and a lack of effort, you know.
The problem is that you don't have a big donor who's running a kosher grasshopper restaurant. Then you'd have all the Sephardic rabbis come.
I just saw somebody showing, I don't know how old the video is, Rabbi Kanievsky, a grasshopper, to show him the simanim of why Sephardim would consider that a kosher grasshopper. So yeah. Let's continue.
Plasma
365 pillars of glowing light stand on each of these four sides.
Isbechol Sitra, Me'inon Arba Sitrin. Kol Inen Amuden Ikrin Amudim Chayim.
All these pillars are called living pillars.
Begin the Lokayim and Ahor de Lahon, Shachach Ba'as Rachat.
For their light does not subside in one place.
Bekulhu Elain Salkin, Be'elain Nachten.
All of them, some are going up and some are going down, making room for one another.
Elain the Salkin, Bitchin da Beda, Menagne Niguna.
The ascending hit or strike each other, playing a melody, and similarly those descending. So while they're actually colliding, and from the collisions are coming out sounds, which are music. Note 214.
14. I think we skipped 213.
Okay, go ahead, read 213, because it's important for people who are making new synagogues.
Sharpen your mind to comprehend further the design of the heavenly temple. That's what gird your weapon means, apparently. Each of the 12 entrances of the temple courtyard is inscribed with the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. When a soul comes to appear before God in the temple, she must enter the appropriate opening. On the 12 entrances, compared to elsewhere in the Zohar, see also where it says, according to in the Zohar, where according to which a synagogue should have 12 windows corresponding to the 12 windows in the heavenly synagogue. And then the next note is on the 365 pillars. On each of the four sides of the temple courtyard, corresponding to the days of the solar year. On the pillars ascending and descending and generating a melody, compare it to Seder Gan Eden. According to an earlier description, there are 365 pillars on the south side of the temple. I have a question on that. I feel like this isn't the first time in Zohar we've seen 365, which is like an obvious reference to the solar year, but it's not our year. So like what's going on there? Why, especially like when there are these very like heavenly descriptions, why are we getting a year that's different from our like the Jewish year we're used to?
The Kohanim was always recognized as solar year. They were fully knowledgeable of what the solar year was, as well as what we know as the Jewish calendar. So when you have the basamim, which is the the spices, you have this concept of that they grind for 368 with 365 for the days of the year, and then 3 more for the which I think are put aside for Yom Kippur. And it was just such. It's just us Jews had to be different and go by the lunar year.
Well, I mean, David is right. They were well aware of the solar year, because that is the year that the lunar solar year has to constantly be readjusted.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
the
in terms
Gemara
of
also says that 365 losase corresponds to the 365 at some of the Gidin, parts of the body, So they were very well aware of the 365. If you really want to get controversial, you can ask this question to Rachel Elior, who has a whole speculates that it should have been 364, according to the Bnei Tzadok, who she believes had
an alternative calendar.
alternative calendar. I mean, they did. It's just a question of whether they had it for 3 years or 100 years in the Second Temple period. That's the question, really, how long they had this calendar for. And
My question wasn't really like did we know that there was a solar year? I know that we knew that, but the question is like what does it mean? Like, what's the difference between like he's specifically referring to the solar year here and not the liturgical year.
Well, look, the liturgical year doesn't have a number. It really doesn't, because it's all over the place. I mean, and for whatever reason, the lunar aspect is what it's whatever it is, 29, 30. Sorry about the lighting there, but that also fluctuates. But I guess you could say it's maybe it's connected to Zeir Anpin, which is the level of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's continue. Page 124. Those ascending played a melody. What
Elaine
melody?
Salke, Denagne Niguna, my Niguna Menagne, Shir Yasma,
Orphan song.
Mizmar
We'll talk
Shiru,
about
Lashem
that.
Shechodesh Gelosasa.
Mizmar, a psalm, sing to God a new song, for he has worked wonders. Psalm 98, verse 1.
Shir Chodesh, Vichi is Shir Atik,
Is there such a thing as an ancient song?
Elashir Da'ad Ka'an Malachin Kadishan Lo Shavachu Le.
So he's
Begin
going
the
to
year.
translate a new song, not as literally a new song, but as a song that wasn't yet sung by certain angels. However, a song that until now the holy angels did not offer in praise.
Begin the year Chodesh.
For it is new.
My
And
time
new.
year Chodesh.
Why is it new?
Begin the Huda Mechadesh Ulame Meshabach Leva
The
Amarle.
one who renews his youth, Matatron, offers it in praise. Go ahead, Zev. Why don't we just finish the page? You're right. The head of the academy said as follows. This one is called new, and he is new because he cleaves to the sun inseparably. Maybe I hope that answers your question, Zev, about the sun here.
Okay. Rabbi, that also plays into your Rachel Elior thing, because Metatron was Enoch, and when they went through with the chariot up into the garden, her claim was that Enoch or Metatron was sitting in the garden, and Enoch was a Cohen.
Well, yeah, he was, yeah. So there's a whole thing about Metatron and Enoch, turning into the other. Yeah, and Rachel did a very interesting, one of the most fascinating talks that I've ever heard was on that subject. As opposed to the other side, which contains nothing new. Of now it is written, there is nothing new in Ecclesiastes. He is old, withered, and never rejuvenated. Interesting, basically. There's so many not spiritually uplifting things in Ecclesiastes. So you'd think that it would be brought more often as like a proof text for the Sitra Achra, for the other side, which is what the Zohar is saying. The Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. And the Zohar says, yeah, for the Sitra Achra, for the Samach Mem, for the dark side, it's all about being old. It's like all those Harry Potter movies. The evil sorcerer Voldemort, he's like the oldest thing around, even older than Dumbledore. I don't know. I mean, he just looks like that. I didn't read the books or really pay attention.
He is older.
He is older, yeah. Because he doesn't have the right side to renew himself like Metatron. Yeah, there's some magic going on here. Okay, let's read notes 215 and 216, Zev.
215, an orphan song, that is, whose author is anonymous. The newness of this psalm refers to the fact that the angels have not yet sung it, and also identify one particular, also to the identity of one particular angel who chants it now, namely the chief angel Metatron, who is designated as the one who renews his youth. On Psalm 98, as orphaned, see in the Talmud in Avodah Zarah, where it explores the account of the Ark of the Covenant in 1 Samuel. The Ark has been captured by the Philistines in battle, but God miraculously punished the enemy by breaking the idol of its god Dagon and striking the population with a plague. Consequently, the suffering Philistines send the Ark back on a wagon drawn by two cows, who miraculously head straight to Israelite territory, as if they knew the way, as described in 1 Samuel 6:12. The cows went straight on the way to Bet Shemesh. On a single road they went, lowing as they went and veering neither right nor left. The Talmudic discussion focuses on the opening of this verse. Vayisharna haparos, the cows went straight. What is the meaning of Vayisharna? Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Meir, they sang Shira, a song. Which song did they sing? Rabbi Shimon, son of Lachish, the orphan psalm. A psalm to sing to Havaya, a new song, for he has worked wonders. His right hand has won him victory, and his holy arm. According to Rabbi Shimon, somewhere else in the Zohar, the heavenly Chayos, living beings, chant the same psalm while carrying the divine throne. Here, though, the spiritual messenger informs Rabbi Shimon that until now holy angels did not offer it in praise. On Psalm 98, see also Bereshis Rabbah and Tosfos and other places. And on Metatron as a nar, a youth, there's also other notes. And then 216.
Yeah.
Metatron, the eternal youth, is fittingly called new. Being closely linked with Shekhinah, symbolized by the cyclically renewing moon, he, along with her, cleaves to the sun, which symbolizes Tiferes. Conversely, the demonic other side is old and withered. On Satan, the evil impulse is old, based on the image in Ecclesiastes, an old and foolish king. See lots of other sources. And also on the contrast between the youthfulness of Metatron or Shekhinah and the agedness of the other side, there are sources too.
Well, this is in such distinction to what we started with earlier, which is like this almost like fear of the body. And now it's switching over and it's embracing youth over old age, right? Isn't it crazy how like the Zohar is so like turning something over as soon as you think like, I get the Zohar, like it's anti the body, it's into the soul, right? And now it just does the complete opposite. It looks at vitality versus like old age, not old age as being something that's old, not the biology of being old, but really like the mindset of the old, like the trickster who might seem like he's got a new trick, but it's really the same trick, just keeps coming back again and again, as opposed to the Shir Chadash, the new song, was never sang before, meaning whether it actually existed or not, it's like it's new. It's like the moon. Did the moon literally renew itself from nothing? No, it was there, but it does renew itself. So this is a fascinating Zohar. The contrast between the previous section and this section is just mind blowing.
But isn't it possible in a way? It's sort of like, yeah, it sounds like that, but maybe it also is very consistent because physical is material. Material is made. If something is made, it eventually degrades. And then spirit is not something that's made, but is. And so it doesn't degrade. And so therefore it could have like this renewal because it is new. It is newness. It is.
It's a very good shot. Does everyone hear what Ben is saying? That's great. So what Ben is basically saying is that when something is physical, it gets old, and entropy, whatever it's. But if it's a spirit, it doesn't get old. So that there is a consistent mahalach in the Zohar, which is good. That's great. Okay, good. So let's see. We're on page 125.
Tu Pasach Rav Mesivta.
The head of the academy open again.
Sarah is chadashas beiduna darga dila garim.
Sarah was rejuvenated with delight, as caused by her level or her rung, for what was written.
Siv achre velosi haisali edna.
After I have become withered, Haisali Edna, I have had Edna, translated as perhaps delight. That's
My-
Genesis 12.
My edna.
What is meant by Edna?
Meshichu de Eden ilah.
A flow of supernal Eden, like Gan Eden.
Uvegin de ismeshachala mistar de nukba.
And since it was conveyed to her from the aspect of the feminine,
Ksiv edna behei.
it is written Edna with a hey, not Aden, but it's the
Begin-
feminized version. So it is written Haita,
Haita v'lo haya.
feminine. Okay, 217, Zev.
No one ever spoke about Gan Edna, but I guess
Yeah.
that's a thing.
No, it will be.
When she became, Sarah was rejuvenated with delight. When she became miraculously fertile at the age of 90, her rejuvenation was stimulated by her runk, Shechina. The term Edna, delight, alludes to Aden, Aden symbolizing Chachma, the source of the flow of emanation. The final letter of Edna, Hey, is a feminine marker, symbolizing the divine feminine, Shechina. The feminine aspect of this miracle is understood by the feminine wording, Hayesa li, I have had, literally, there was to me, rather than the masculine form Hayali.
Mhm.
The verse from Genesis records Sarah's reaction to the divine prediction that she will bear a son at age 90. Sarah laughed inwardly, saying, "After being withered, am I to have delight with my husband so old?" Literally, and my Lord is old. Here, apparently, the head of the academy construes Sarah's rhetorical question as a declarative statement. I have withered, I have had delight. See in Bava Mesivta where it says after, Bava Metzia where it says, after I have withered, I have had Edna, delight. Rav Chisda said, after the flesh had withered and wrinkles multiplied, the flesh nisaden was rejuvenated or became tender. The wrinkles were smoothed out and beauty returned to its sight.
Okay. We continue on top, and my Lord is old.
Adoni zaken. V'chi afal gav de'iu zaken lo ischaze lo olada.
Now, even though he was old, was he not capable of having children? Question.
Elalav milsat ze'er ta'amra legabe.
Rather, to belittle herself for having clung to that old fool who was never rejuvenated and cannot have offsprings. She was saying that I've become old, not him, but who is she referring to as Adoni? I've become enslaved to my master, the dark side, which is where oldness and not able to have children is coming from. Doesn't mean Adoni Avraham. Okay.
To begin hu zaken lo ischadosh v'lo avet toladin. The malay have a avet toladin have a metashta sha'olma.
For if he did have offsprings, the world would be obliterated, similar to like the Chazal rabbinic statement about the giant sea serpent, that if it had children, the Leviathan, the world would be destroyed. Therefore, the Blessed Holy One repeated, why is it that Sarah laughed, saying, shall I really give birth when I am so old? So the Midrashic literature says that God changed the truth for the sake of peace. According to the Zohar, God didn't have to change the truth. He just interpreted what Sarah meant because Sarah never meant her husband. She meant herself because of her connection to the dark side, which she shouldn't have said, because, why give the dark side that credit? But maybe that's a way of a righteous person saying, well, I'm not so righteous. It's like somebody kind of acting humble. But go ahead and read note 218. Zev, I made you a co-host because at some point I have to go to Myra.
Yeah, we're getting close here.
Yeah.
218. The head of the academy wonders why Sarah would say, "My Lord is old," since the fact that Abraham was old does not preclude fathering children. According to Genesis 25, Abraham later had 6 children with Keturah. He explains that actually Sarah wasn't referring to Abraham, but rather to the other side, who was old and impotent. She was belittling herself, admitting that she had clung to the other side, making him my Lord, and therefore had not given birth. On the other side is an old fool. See above in the note about Ecclesiastes. The following verse confirms that Sarah was not describing Abraham as old, but was implicating herself. It reads in full, Levi said to Abraham, "Why is it that Sarah laughed, saying, 'Shall I really give birth when I am so old?'" Literally, and I am old. According to the Midrashic interpretation, when God repeated to Abraham what Sarah had said, he changed her statement from referring to Abraham to herself in order to maintain marital harmony. And then there are a number of sources on that. The theme of demonic impotence derives in part from Baba Basra. In the name of Rav, everything that the Blessed Holy One created in his world, he created male and female. Even the Leviathan, the Leviathan, the elusive snake, and the Leviathan, the writhing snake, he created male and female. And if they mated with one another, they would destroy the entire world. What did the Blessed Holy One do? He castrated the male and killed the female, salting her for the feast of the righteous in the world to come.
I was busy.
When we build a sukkah.
Truth is, I don't get hungry very often. But that's not why I eat. Okay, great.